You've reached Monster 911, and I'm Lance Hightower. I've been taking cryptid emergency calls for over 5 years. If you have a cryptid emergency, please call our toll-free number, 866-306-8085. I can help you. What's your emergency? Man alive.
It scared the hell out of me because I'm like, what the, damn, what was that,
Yeah.
Shit. And all the shampoo bottles and conditioner bottles and soap and razors, everything just, hit the deck down in there with me. And I'm trying not to step on the razors, and there's soap in there now, and it's slippery, and it's a dang metal tub,
Oh, yeah.
And now here all my family runs in there, and I'm in there butt naked, and they're, I'm like, man, we got so much going on here. You know what I mean? I didn't know whether to be embarrassed or scared or upset or what.
Yeah, exactly. You just you're just as surprised as they are, and they're surprised, and they're seeing you upright still.
Well, they thought the way it sounded to them, they said, we thought you had slipped in that bathtub and hid my head inside that metal bathtub.
Oh, yeah.
That's what they thought,
Dang.
But, and then after that, let's see, was that would still been in 97. That was the next night. And see, back in 2000, we had went back up there again, and my daughter was there, and I had a friend with me. He was from Tatum, and we had went out there. We were fishing, and it was probably, I don't know, around 7:30. It had already gotten dark, and again, it was probably around them holidays. It always is when we go. That's when we get our time off.
Right.
And so we were out there, and same thing. And now, I've had some experience with this, so now I kind of know what's going on, right?
Mm-hmm.
So all the bullfrogs quit, the crickets quit, and I'm like, okay, we've been on this one before. I know what's going on here. And so I said, there's something out here with us. Y'all just be quiet, like that. And so they got quiet. And I just so happened, Mom and my grandparents always had these million watt, what do you call them, those spotlights? Yeah. And so I had one of them out there with me, because I'm always looking for water moccasins and stuff while they're fishing at night.
Oh, yeah.
And so, because I've been chased by one of them too after I missed them with a shovel. So I said, y'all be quiet. And I could just kind of feel with this thing. It's like I could feel it, And I had that same old creepy crawly feeling that I had that first time. But now I kind of know what's going on. It's the only difference. But I still got that eerie feeling though, And I picked that spotlight up. And I didn't have to look for it. I put it right on it, not even seen anything yet. But I could I could just feel where he's at. And I turned that spotlight on, and sure enough, he was right there. First hit, first sign of the light. And they have them, what do you call them, puppy dog tails or cat tails out there in the pond. Well, this thing must have had a long neck, because he was able to keep his body behind like the cat tails and stuff, and then stick his long old neck out and get a drink of water like my uncle was saying. And man, that was probably across that pond. I'm going to say from where we were at was probably how far, but maybe a good 200 foot or so.
Yeah,
probably a good 200 foot from where we were at. And I'm telling you, from there, it looked to me, shining the light, when the light hit the eyes, that the eyes were somewhere, in my estimation, would have to been somewhere around maybe, foot 13, 14 inches, maybe a foot and a half wide, like a big old head.
Wow.
And the color of the eyes were different. Like I've seen a panther, like I said, their eyes are green at night. There ain't no question about it. Like I've been there and done that with them in the daytime and the nighttime. And so I knew it wasn't no panther, and the coyotes, a lot of times theirs is kind of like a gold color. And so this, though, it wasn't like really red, but it wasn't really just orange. It was like, the best way to explain it is like a burnt orange,
Okay.
And they were just, you could see them when they would blink. And he kept his eyes focused on us the whole time he was drinking, going, what in the hell is that? And going, Daddy, what is that? That scares me, Dad. She was freaking out. And I was like, well, y'all just calm down, just, keep it down. But the whole time they're, making all the noise and racket, like, what is that?
He's not worried about it.
He's not worried about it. He's just steady focusing on us, but not like just a dead focus, but you could tell he was relaxed because he kept blinking his eyes.
So he's looking at you, he's drinking, he's blinking his eyes, he's got his eyes on you, and you can see the body, you can see everything.
No, I couldn't see the body because the body was behind the cattails. That's what I'm saying.
Oh,
He had
okay.
neck. He was able to keep his body behind the cattails, and that's another fascinating thing. Was I was amazed at how long his neck was, because like from where those cattails were, where his body would be hidden, and then to reach down into that water, I would have said his neck would have had to been somewhere around at least 3 foot long. And to me that's long. From when I'm thinking of something that's could be
Yeah.
like a wolf or a dog or something like that. And
Wow.
but I was just amazed by that. I just remember that much.
Yeah.
And but he never growled or anything at us. It was just dead silence, and we're locking eyes at each other, all three of us looking at it. I'm gonna say this probably went on for probably about 5 minutes, and he was just casually drinking, just watching us, and then he just quietly sucked his head back in there and disappeared. We didn't even hear it run off. He was so quiet. And then I'm gonna say it probably took about another 3 minutes or so. Then here come the bullfrogs again, and here come the crickets, and everything was back to normal again. And then the little goosebumps, which we called jeeves, at that time, just kind of went away, and we was relaxed again. And was like, that was weird, and
Yeah.
Ronnie's still asking, like, man, what was that?
How many
And
people saw this?
well, it was just at the time, it was just us three out there at that point.
Okay.
Now, my wife has seen something, which this is kind of skipping through everything, but back coming from my parents' house, we were headed back to our house back where we lived. And so on the way home, there's a railroad trestle, bridge, excuse me, and the embankments are pretty steep. I mean, I can't say they're just straight up and down, but they're darn near close to it the way this thing was built. And something between 6 and 7 foot long ran in front of my truck, in front of the headlights, and then I don't know how, but ran straight up that embankment. And to me, unless you had a rope or something to hang on to, or you was one of them mountain goats, I don't know how you could have done it.
Wow.
And she saw that, and she'd go, "Wow!" Where I looked at her to make sure she saw it too. And I was like, "Yeah, she finally saw one. It's not just me this time."
Right.
She's heard about these things, and and I'm like, "Yeah, she finally got to see it too." And now she, can kind of see what I'm talking about, and how fast they are, And at that time, he stayed on all fours. This one did, and it was like I mean, it's at night, so it's hard to say, but I'm gonna say it was like a smoky grayish color, the best I could tell,
Okay.
But he's hauling butt, this thing's moving like lightning,
Sure.
And the thing that amazed me was how he ran straight up that embankment and never missed a beat. I mean, never slowed down. And I thought, I don't know how he just did that, because going up there to the top of that trestle, well, the thing up there said, I want to say it said something like 14 foot 8 inches or something on the sign up there,
Wow.
and it just ran up it like it was nothing. And I was like, man, and I didn't say nothing yet. I was waiting to make sure, because if I didn't want to feed into it yet to see if she saw it,
Mm-hmm.
And she looked at me and she goes, "Did you see that?" And I was like, "Yeah, you saw it then, right?" It's not just me. She's like, "Yeah." I was just like, remember saying to myself, like, "Yeah, man, finally,
Yeah. Just kind of validated what you had been seeing.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
Had
But going back to the one there back in 2010 with the two there at the end of my 5 acres, I didn't have any of them creepy feelings at that one, and I maybe I should have, but I just didn't. And even then, I wasn't thinking about the guy telling me about the elder, the old Indian man, any of that. Till like I said, a month later, sometime like right after Christmas. But when I got up there and looked at them, they didn't growl at me. They didn't bare their teeth. Yes, I could see their teeth because they had their mouth open. Just how a dog would pant.
Mm-hmm.
But there was no aggression. But I'm gonna tell you what though, like I said, I was close enough to see the whites in their eyes, and their eyes were brown in color as well. And something else I noticed was like the shape of their eye. It wasn't just like round or just even like a dog's eye. It just kind of had, in a way, it was kind of to me like they almost had like I don't want to say they were Oriental or Asian look, but it's like I don't know how else to kind of say that, but it's like their eyes were kind of elongated like that, just a little bit to
Okay,
me. But
so like an almond shape.
yes, like an almond shape, but big, like
Mm-hmm.
I don't like big as in big, like it didn't fit the proportion of the head because the head was big too. It's like everything fit right, but you know what I'm saying. They were just good size, 7 foot tall,
Yeah.
But
Interesting.
I don't know why. But like I said, I took 3 more steps forward, and then when I did, they hunkered their head down about 3 foot down, and then the ears folded back. And I could tell that I was thinking to myself, I was like, okay, they're either fixing to bolt towards me, to come get me, or they're fixing to bolt away from me. And I didn't know which. And I just started praying. I said, Dear Heavenly Father, protect me. I don't know what they're fixing to do. I'm still not really exactly sure what they are. I was just praying, God, protect me. I said, send Michael, Archangel, whatever you got. I said, I don't
Absolutely.
know what's about to happen here. And I was not saying this real loud, but I did say that prayer audibly, but just under my breath. And I'm not sure if they could hear me or not, or if they even understood. But the looks in their eyes, though, when they looked at me, what fascinated me was it wasn't like another animal looking at me like a dog or a wolf. When they looked at me, I realized real quick that they were studying me just like I was studying them, not just like another animal looking back. I could tell that they were contemplating in those brains that they had.
There
You
was
know what
some
I mean?
thought going on.
There was some thought process going on. And the biggest thought process to me was it's like they were amazed that maybe I could even see or even snuck up on them like that. Especially with the wind blowing towards them.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
but I,
that's well, that matters too, and I'm glad you bring that up. And that's, when we go out, you don't hear that a lot on the podcast, other podcasts and things like that, but wind matters a
it
lot when it comes to
does.
predators
Oh
because
yeah.
you can trick them a couple different ways. Any predator, most indigenous predators you can trick. You can trick by sound. You can to a certain degree by scent, but very, very, very rarely. You can trick by observation or what they see. You can
Mm-hmm.
trick them to, look over here, look over here. Um, and so, but a lot of them are action driven, of course. They like movement. That's why you don't want to
Mm-hmm.
run from a predator. That just
Yeah.
stimulates that aggression.
Yes.
Um, but it's very hard to trick them with smell because they're so darn good.
Oh yeah. Yeah. No, they know what's going on and they know what they're smelling.
So what happened when they lean down about 3 feet? They're standing. They're both looking
Uh-huh.
at you. Their ears go back, which is a sign of they're getting ready to get froggy or something's going to happen. What happened after that?
Well, like I said, they hunkered down about 3 foot, ears folded back, and like before this, they were kind of casual and just kind of panting with their mouths open. And then when they tucked down like that, they didn't exactly go all the way down to all fours yet. They're still on 2 feet. They just kind of hunkered down,
Right?
and I noticed they had shut their mouths shut. Now I know they're serious. Like they shut their mouth, ears folded back, and they're just looking at me like just straight on stare down. And they're not making a sound. And I don't know why I felt like they were using telepathy. It could be maybe he just looking at the other one like, "What are you looking at?" and then just looked at me. But it's almost like there was a little telepathy going on. But that could just be my mind. I don't know. But
Hmm.
that's what it kind of looked like. It looked like they were communicating without being verbal or anything. It was weird. But um, when they hunkered down about 3 foot, ears folded back, mouths closed, and now they're looking at me. And this is when I start praying, God protect me. And I begin to take those 3 steps that I took forward. I begin to take 3 steps back. And then I said to them, right after I prayed that prayer, I just kind of said, "Whoa," like that. I just kept trying to talk to him because I've always heard, when you see an animal, try to talk to him, a little
Yep.
bit like that.
Yep.
I put both hands up toward him, and I just said, "Whoa," calm down. And then I said out loud, "I'm not here to hurt you. That I'm just curious, and I'm sorry if I got too close." And that's what I said to him. And then they still studied me. The whole time we're looking at each other, and I take the 3 steps back and the prayer and all this. I'm gonna say is a span of probably about maybe 3 minutes, but it seemed like forever. And all of a sudden, just out of the blue, they just bolted right back up into the ATV trail we had there. which is also interesting. They took my trail to get out of there real quick, and
The path of least resistance.
yes, yes, but I was so amazed how lightning fast they were, and it's like the only way I can describe it uh, was like if you watch Star Trek and they go into warp drive and you see that thing stretched like a rubber band and then it's gone. It's like it was so fast. It's like they went into warp drive, and I mean they were just lightning gone, and it's like they were so quiet about it too. And then when I went over there, I thought, man, they're bound to be a footprint over there as big as they were, and I couldn't find not one doggone footprint whatsoever of them. But my wife, a couple of days later, when we went digging around, she said that she saw a couple of footprints that were like, what do you call it, digigrade or whatever, uh, that were down in the ground. But she also found some gray hair that was on the barbed wire fence, and we actually got that somewhere in a doggone baggie if we could find it.
Oh,
'Cause we had
really?
just moved to Gilmer, and do we
Say, I'm
still
sorry.
have it?
Say that one more time about the gray hair.
We had found it and put it in a Ziploc baggie, and we've got it somewhere. I just don't know exactly where right now. But we held on to that. I never did go get it looked at or tested. I just always kind of held on to it.
Well, if there's more than one hair, it's possible I can have it tested. Because when you get that darn hair tested, it gets so darn expensive, especially if you do a DNA analysis. Now,
Uh huh.
to do a hair testing, that's a little bit more reasonable. There's people that do that, and I have a friend that does that. And so basically,
Okay.
what it is, um, he's like a forensic specialist, and they have a sample of hair of every known animal on the planet
Oh, cool.
and every mammal. So
That's
it's pretty cool and everything. So they look at, you know, shape. They look at the external margins of the hair. Is it hollow? What's the structure? And so they compare it to things if it's abnormal. If they can do a DNA sample, sometimes they will.
mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But the DNA analysis gets really expensive fast.
Mm. You said we had more than one strand of hair in there. She said there was more than one. I was thinking it was one, but we need to find that.
Yeah. So if you find one, we can just text me.
Okay. Yeah, it was caught in the barbed wire fence. That's where we got it. She is. I missed it while we were looking around. I'm looking on the ground, and she just felt led to look at the fence, and there it was stuck in the fence.
Well, fences, like when deer cross and things like that, that's usually a good place to look. Um, Up and especially if there's branches broke, sometimes a hair will get stuck in there. I've had
Mm-hmm.
people find hair in screens on houses,
Mm.
like stuck in the screen, especially if it's a door that's locked or a screen that's locked on the inside, but they can bend enough of it and
Uh huh.
they'll try to stick a hand in or something like that. And then of course it's kind of
We.
terrifying to hear that, but they'll get a piece of hair lodged or wedged between two boards, trim boards or something like
Uh
that.
huh.
So I've had some guys also find hair up on their deer stand, on their tree climber.
Oh wow.
Yeah, they get up there and they're looking around, and then when you're hunting deer, you kind of look at everything over time, and they're looking down there where their feet are at, and it's got that rough graded plate, and they were looking down there. One guy said he saw hair stuck on the bottom side, and he pulled the hair out, and it was gray. He says, "What the heck?" Now he thought it was a possum, but the hair was longer. It was long. And
Mm-hmm.
so he started looking, and then he came back the next day, and the tree climbers that he wraps around the tree,
Uh huh.
he found hair wedged in some of those. The tree climbers. It's got the pegs on the side that you can, they
Oh yeah.
yeah, they
Uh
come down, and he was finding hair there, and just everything was askewed. He said, "No, possum won't do that." And so
huh.
his tree climbers were off skewed instead of straight, and so I don't think he found any prints, but he just had that weird feeling.
Uh huh.
That doesn't
Yeah.
constitute really a dog man, but in some ways it's very possible, especially with these creatures around. They just elicit some that vibe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, my wife, there was a time too back at the same place here in Tatum we were at for the 5 acres. where she had said to come home from work, and she said she felt like something was watching her. At the same time, she said there was an odd smell in the air, where she said it kind of smelled like a mixture of like an old dumpster smell mixed with like a almost like a sulfur smell, if I remember right. And I remember like a day or two after that, we had found some rocks. I had cut a tree down that was close to where the house was, and we'd had a couple close calls with tornadoes at that time through there. And I said, well, I'm not going to take a chance with this tree, but I'm going to cut this tree down. And so we left like a little stump about 2 foot tall there,
Mm-hmm.
and we'd use it just to sit on and stuff. Just sit out there on it or whatever. And I didn't really have anything on it at all. Just we'd sit on it.
Right.
And so I come out one morning and I asked my wife, I said, where do these big old rocks come from? They're sitting on that stump. Did you put them out there, and why? And she said, well, I didn't put them out there. I thought you did, you know. And I never did, really think about it being something like that or even a Sasquatch really at the time, but I should have. But I guess since we saw, like in my opinion, the Dogman encounters, I just always kind of had my mind, I guess, fixed in that way now, rather than a Sasquatch. But
Well, and there's so much that we still need to learn with these dogman creatures. We don't know, and maybe there's people out there that have seen these creatures actually do that with rocks. Now we do know that that tends to be a common feature with Bigfoot, with the rock stacking. Um, but with Dogman, I've not heard that, nor have I had that um, with some of the guests where they talked about that. The Dogman have stacked rocks. It's mainly been with the Sasquatch,
yes,
predominantly. Not to say
right,
it's not impossible, just don't know if a Dogman would do that. Why? They tend to have different characteristics, of course, than a Bigfoot. It seems like I've not had very many encounters of those that have seen or come in fairly close contact with the Dogman that everybody felt like it was a happy moment or a feeling.
right,
They just said, even if there was no fear, like your uncle, which is rare, but it's just the behavior of these creatures is one of them. Not only is the size imposing and just
yes,
incredibly, people is just in awe of this thing, how big it is and how fast
yes.
and how its agility is incredible.
Oh, man.
It's got world class speed and strength that would be so far superior on any human athlete ever.
Oh, yes,
But it's just the intentional posture and the grins and the look and what it
hmm
does. It's thinking. It has intent. In other words, it's almost once they want to cause fear to rise up in you. They want to get a rise out of you.
yes, 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 exactly right. Yeah, it's almost like, I mean, of course, I've heard about stuff. I mean, after my encounter, you can't help but go researching stuff, and wondering if somebody else had this encounter and how did they deal with it? What did they do? And I'm always trying to learn about it now that I've had it. And
Right.
I've had these questions: Are they evil? Are they good? Or is it a little both? Just like there's good people and bad people. Are there good ones and bad, of these?
Yes.
And like I've kind of come to the determination in my own mind that these things, in my opinion, can be almost like spiritual and physical. Like they can, I don't know what am I saying. Like there may be, like they could be spiritual, but they can manifest, if that makes sense. Like if you read the Bible, back in was it Revelation? Back like after he had died, how he come back and he was like with the disciples, and it talks about how he had went through like a locked door, but at the same time, from going like from being a spirit, he began to manifest where he actually ate fish. And it's like, I'm thinking, well, if he ate fish, he didn't put the meat in there and then it fell through his body and hit the floor because he's a ghost, you know. And I'm thinking these things may kind of have the same ability where they can be spiritual, but then when they want to, they can manifest. And I'm thinking that may be why nobody can find the bones of these things and stuff.
Well, and there lies, one of the predominant questions, or I don't want to even say debates, but it's more or less, debate in the sense of good conversation. That how do these creatures? They obviously populate,
Mm-hmm.
and they have a language. They have some type of a culture. Otherwise, you wouldn't see two together, right? And
Right.
they have some. All animals have a language. Now, it may not be the language English, but in many different ways, whether it's spoken or unspoken, um, whether it is secreted through pheromones, hormones, there is some type of communication that goes on with most animal creatures, indigenous or otherwise. So,
Mm-hmm.
um, do I think that there's a spiritual aspect to these creatures? I really do. Now, do they have a part of them that has this celestial aspect to them where they, manifest in the physical?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I do believe that there are evil spirits that can do that. In the spiritual realm or world, you can have things manifest in the physical. Now, without getting too far off a tangent, I'll just say that may be for another show, but it's possible. It's
Yes.
possible.
We've
Um,
had we've had some of that too. We've lived in a place that was haunted, so
yeah,
uh,
and that's a good point. I mean, so that's a very good discussion. But if you ask another part of me, do I think they've been around for a while? I do, and they've been isolated in certain pockets or regions of the United States.
mm-hmm.
Now, what gets into some more deep discussion of interest is why our government is so interested in them,
Yeah.
which is be equally important in my mind, like Sasquatch. And I could give my theories or postulations of what I think on why, but that's kind of interesting. I will say this: I won't give a name, but there was a gentleman that I interviewed some time back, a few years ago, and he didn't want to be on, and I did a narration show
Mm-hmm.
about him. Um, and without giving all the details of because I don't want this person uh, known, I'll just say this: um, there was a conference this year that he went to, and I got this secondhand information. The person that gave me this information spoke to this person one on one, and he retold. He was in person. He went to this conference and he retold what happened. He did say that he called a podcast show, and when he retold what it was my show at that time, and I did a narration. And he said later down the road, after I don't know how long it was, he was contacted by some government people.
Mm-hmm.
And how they found who he was, he still doesn't know. But it was apparent, based on what he does for a living, they found him. And
Mm.
they kind of held him until the government folks came in. He thought he didn't know it was because of what he had done.
Uh-huh.
Um, and I'll just say he caused great harm to a Dogman creature. Let's just say that.
I got you.
And they came out and he said they basically wanted his firearm.
Huh.
And he said, so he gave him one. And they said, this is what puzzled me. I bring all that up to say this. They looked at him and said, you destroyed an asset of ours.
Oh, okay.
That was their statement, that secondhand from what the gentleman told me, that
Uh-huh.
the first-hand account gentleman told him what these government people who we don't know, we just
Uh-huh.
call them collectively the MIBs or the dark agents, what
I
they
got you.
said. You took out one of our assets.
Huh.
Now, why would they say that? You took out one of our assets, or you
Right.
eliminated an asset.
Huh.
That is very
That's curious.
strikingly odd, strange to me.
Yes, it
An
is.
asset. An asset is something that you have or own or control.
Right.
whether you're talking money assets or different types of, a home asset or things like that,
Right.
finances. But an object or a thing, that's different. That means you control it,
Uh-huh.
you know about it. Uh, so that struck me as highly unusual. I've never heard that statement used like that, but that
Hmm.
was a first-hand account passed to a second-hand and back to me
Mm.
from this past year. So that right there still has me puzzled.
Yeah.
And so I bring that up because that's still a part that I wonder how involved is the government at a deep, deep level, deep state
Uh,
level, involved with
uh,
these creatures. I know they know about them. That's not even in question.
oh yeah,
They,
absolutely.
they know about the Bigfoot. They know about all these strange, unusual creatures, whether it's Mothman or anything with horns or rake looking creatures. They
Mm-hmm.
know about those too. Um,
Yeah.
just like the ET UFOs have been covered up for, you know, 50 years. And then just recently, last year or the year before, they just come forward. Oh, yeah, we've known about them.
Right. Right.
Well, the same people that have done that in covering up this deep state, these people, which
Mm.
it all revolves around the military industrial complex. They're
Mm.
just sub levels.
Mm-hmm.
There is the base level of this esoteric, covert, above top secret group that ultimately has military involved and
Yeah.
has all the alphabet groups, CIA, FBI, so forth and so on. So
Right.
the same type of people that's covered the UFO are a different division and other people, but same type that's also covered these creatures up.
But they're part of the family. Yes.
Yes, and they use the same tactics, same coercion, same threats, all that they've used for UFO people for years. It's
Right.
just same umbrella, just different people because I believe that the departments are compartmentalized. These departments are compartmentalized so much that everybody
Mm-hmm.
focuses in on different creatures, and they become a specialist in that. Now, when I say people, I mean there's hundreds of people that are doing these in this division, if not thousands, doing this.
Mm-hmm.
So don't want to lose sight of your this story, but I'm just saying that I believe that there's aspects that these creatures are highly sensitive subject. I think
Mm-hmm.
that the government has known for years, and so just be mindful anytime you're out on your property or if you notice um, a vehicle that shouldn't be there. It doesn't have to be a truck. It can be just odd vehicles, but usually, regardless of the vehicle model or year, the windows
Uh-huh.
will always be tinted, dark,
Tended.
very
Oh,
dark.
okay.
And they're moving away from having government tags because they know people now can recognize that pretty quick. Now
Uh-huh.
what they're doing is they're moving more toward leased cars and trucks,
Okay.
like from rent, rent
Yeah.
Hertz, and these
Mm.
other car rental places, truck rental places. So it may have a regular state tag on it or a tag from another state instead of a
Okay.
government plate. But usually, more than not, the windows will typically be darkened. It'll just be a car that sticks out for no good reason.
Okay.
So just keep that in the back of your mind, not to be paranoid about it. Um,
Well,
what's
I'll
that?
definitely stay aware. He was just saying he was saying that some of them too he thinks may be kind of like uh a different race.
No, you hit on a very, very, very good subject just now. It
I
and
have a friend that seen this falling star laying right in back of his barn. So he ran through the barn and grabs a gunny sack. And he's going to go out and get this meteorite, or because he just fell in back of his barn. He runs out there and he trips over something, and it's a head, a giant head. It's got still got flesh on it, but most of it's been burned off. It fell through. It can materialize at will, and it was coming to Earth, but it materialized in the upper atmosphere instead of on the ground, and it burned itself up. There's no ship, no nothing, but this giant head, elongated head, stunk like hell. We put it in a gunny sack, and all of a sudden there was headlights, and he was taken to a military installation and kept for 3 days, and was told, "You do not speak of this to nobody, or we'll take out your whole family, down to your pets, your cats, and your dogs."
Good.
Anyway,
Well,
the
that's
guy that was telling him all this after he'd been there for 2 or 3 days was looking at something in a desk. Somebody knocked on the door where he was at, and man telling him all this got up. Well, when he stood up, my friend reached over and took out pictures that he was looking at. He got 3 pictures. One is of this skull that he found, and I had it videoed, but I can't find it the video. But it was a man-eater, and he had a picture of a spaceship on the ground, and had 2 lines of people. I mean, like 50 in each line, or 100 in each line, 50 to 100 in each line, going into this saucer. And they were there to get the derelict, the ones that nobody will ever miss.
wow.
And we're like cattle to them, and the government knows about it.
Well, I believe personally that our government's made some deals with the devil,
Yeah.
regarding certain things. So I definitely can't argue with that. But they know about these creatures for sure. And I believe that a lot of these people that work for the government that do question people that's had encounters of these creatures and they go out to threaten them, I don't, based on previous interviews that I've done and the bizarre oddness of the instant appearance of these agents, shall we call them,
Yes.
that they just appear out of thin air and they literally disappear in thin air, so to speak, where
Yeah.
the person, the guest, will turn their back for a second and then they're just gone.
Gone.
So I wonder, there is some technology there that's far beyond what we've ever heard of or seen that the
Yes.
government has access to. And I do believe there is some, let's just say, cooperation with other entities for this technology, and they know things and can do things that the government utilizes skill sets to their advantage, and they use it to their advantage with UFOs, these alien entities, as well as these unknown biological entities that we call creatures or beings or these humanoids. So
Yes.
no matter what they look like, whether canine in nature,
Real long and elongated head,
yes,
and like twice as big as our head.
oh yeah,
A long skull on it, real long.
yes.
Mm.
Wow. Incredible encounters that you guys have had out there. I mean, and here's the thing, it's, a lot of people ask me, I grew up in this area, Lance, for years as a kid, and I don't remember hearing anyone talk about this or seeing anything, and all of a sudden they just start appearing. What's going on?
Right.
And I've
right.
had, like in your case, we had, I've got an uncle that's had an encounter, and then I've had an encounter. My wife was with me, had an encounter, and then I saw him again over here, and it's a very valid question. It's just really hard to answer. And I wonder, part of me says just what we said, does this follow along biblical?
Well, yeah, I wondered the same thing. Not to cut you off, but this kind of takes me back now that you're talking about that. See, I've had an encounter back when I was around, I think I was somewhere around 16, 17 years old. And you know how we all get depressed from time to time.
Sure.
And I wasn't wanting to commit suicide or nothing like that, but I was just really depressed, and I seen how the world was going. And like I said, now back then we were really going to church hot and heavy, and so I was praying one night, and I was just talking to God, and I was just crying out to him, God, I just hate the way people are murdering, shooting each other, and this and that going on. And other side of the world, people are starving to death, and all these weird diseases. I said, God, is there anywhere else that we could live or I could live, just to get away from it. I'm not wanting to die or anything, but God, is there just, can you just take me away from all this nonsense,
Right.
And I was just at a real vulnerable time in life, and like I said, I wasn't contemplating suicide or anything like that, but I just didn't want to be a part of this no more.
Right.
So I just prayed my heart out to God, just, if you can, I just want to be somewhere where it's peaceful and it's nice as there anywhere. And I had forgotten all about that prayer, and it's probably been about 6 or 7 months go by, and then all of a sudden, well, before this, I started having like these orbs come up in my room, and I'd see them fly around. They'd come through the wall, and what was weird is it's like it was a bright orb, but the weird thing is the light would not go out of its sphere. So what I'm trying to say is there's just like a light in my room, but it's not lighting up the whole room. It's just keeping the light inside the shape of the roundness,
Oh.
It's not the sphere. It was weird. But I could feel this thing was studying me or whatever, and I didn't know what it was. And this happened twice to me, and then it'd go out. And then, like, maybe another couple weeks would go by, and then all of a sudden I was awakened out of my sleep, and I felt like it was the Lord speaking to me, and he said, wake up. And so I remember I woke up, and he's like, come outside. I want you to see something. And so I get up and put my shoes on because we had grass birds and stuff out there. We was out there at Mom and Dad's place at the time. Like I said, I was still around 16, 17 years old, high school.
Right.
And we had a pet dog, a Shih Tzu, that would bark at, just about anything. So I had to be really quiet, so I'm tiptoeing through there, and she would usually sleep back there with Mom and Dad in their bedroom, and Mom was next to theirs. And a lot of times they'd shut the door, to sleep at night, whatever. And I'd ease down through the hallway, and I went outside, and then it was a real cloudy night, but I could still kind of see the clouds, and they were just real low, almost, looked like the bottom could just bust out and just start, raining just at any time.
Right.
And so the way the Lord had brought me out of the house, I come out of the door that would face towards the south. And so I walked around the outside of the house and then walked around and then started looking due north, but up in the air, up towards the sky. Like where I felt like the Lord was directing me. And it's like he said, look here, So I'm looking up there and all I see are clouds. And I'm standing there probably a good 5 to 7 minutes and nothing's happening. And so now I'm thinking, okay, I'm schizophrenic. I'm thinking God's speaking to me, and it's just my own stupid head playing games with me,
Right.
What I don't understand, though, is why I'd wake myself out of a good sleep. And I remember speaking to God, actually kind of irritated whenever he first woke me up, saying, God, this better be good. And I know that's a stupid thing to say because here I am speaking to God this way, and that's a big no-no.
Right.
And so, but I'm just waking up and I'm groggy and I'm not thinking right. And plus I'm a teenager, right?
Right.
And so I just remember looking up there going, okay, this is just stupid me. I'm not going to stand. I'm sitting there looking up at the sky like an idiot, and I should be still in bed asleep. And I've kind of got mad at myself too. And so I turned around to walk away, and then I heard that voice inside me again and said, no. And it got stern with me. It said, you turn around and you look and you sit there and you stand there. I'm sorry, not sit there, but stand there and you look. I told you. And it's like he got stern with me. And so I turned back around and said, okay, Lord, I'm sorry. I repent. And I kept looking. I still had to wait. Like it didn't just happen instant when he said that. I still had to wait. But he's got me sitting here waiting. And altogether, I'm going to say probably a good 10 minutes or so goes by. Then all of a sudden, the clouds begin to kind of move. And like if you ever boiled water and you see how it foams and boils,
Mm-hmm.
well, that's how these clouds begin to do that. They begin to kind of look like boiled water foaming, but it's up there in the sky. Clouds are doing this. And then it's like as if a giant hand just pulled the clouds apart. And the only way I can describe this thing was like if you ever seen the movie Independence Day. And this thing was massive. When I say massive, I'm talking about miles big. And the weird thing is as it began to set down and then come over where I was at, it didn't make a sound. And that's what I was amazed at. Like, I don't hear no jet engine. I don't hear nothing. It was just pure silence until it got like that first part of the I don't know if you want to call it a craft. It was so big that I tell everybody I saw a floating city, you know,
Mm.
and it got like within a foot over me, and then all of a sudden the sound that it made was like a constant thunder. If you can imagine that, like thunder that wouldn't go away. It's like constant, you know.
How far? How close was it?
I'm gonna say it was probably maybe another maybe another 300 foot above the top of the trees, and the trees themselves around their house was probably a good, I don't know, 120, 130 foot high, you know. And then this thing would have been like another 300 foot above those.
Oh, wow.
And I just remember how I was freaked out. How can something this big, miles wide and miles long, with this weird metallic, like I could tell this thing was made out of metal, but it wasn't no metal I've seen here on Earth. It was like a blue and a purple hue, if you can imagine those two put together,
Mm-hmm.
like kind of the glistle like it had. And there was like a center on it that was kind of like a blue, like a fluorescent blue. Like I noticed, if you can imagine this thing as it's coming, it's like it's taking forever because it's so big. And the more it comes, the more I realize how big it is, because it's taking, you know, so much time to come up there and center on me. It's like I'm just seeing this thing, and I'm like, man, this thing is huge. And how is it not making a sound until it gets directly over me? It's like I can't understand this. You know, I'm listening to try to figure out what is making this thing, you know,
Yeah.
float in the air like it's doing. If this thing had to be millions and trillions of pounds, you know, or tons.
Yeah.
And I just remember the Lord spoke to me, and you know, now do you see? And I'm just like, oh wow, and I'm just beginning to repent. You know, I'm crying, tears running down my mouth. I mean, I'm just getting nasty. I mean, I'm just, you know, have you ever heard the term somebody says you were ugly crying? You know, I mean, I was just like, I was out of it, and I was just, oh
Wow.
my goodness, you know, like this is for real. And then I'm scared now, because now I realize that blue spot that I was telling about, I could tell was coming towards me, and I knew it was coming towards me because as it was coming, it began to really slow down. So I knew it was trying to center up on me, and that kind of scared me.
Sure.
And so I ran to the middle of the yard to get away from it. And then I really got scared, because when I moved back south at about, you know, 40, 50 steps trying to get away from it, and then I moved step to the side going due east, another 30 steps or so to get away from it. And plus to wonder, is this thing really centering up on me, or am I just freaking myself out, you know?
Right.
And so this thing centers up and goes due east with me, and I'm like, oh my God. And so then the Lord speaks within me, inside me, and says, do you still want to go? And then at about that time, and right after he said that thing, it made like a shifting sound, like how can I explain this? It's like something huge shifted gears and went koosh, koosh, you know, but it was loud, massive, you know. And when it did that, and when it did, that light got extra bright, and that little circle thing opened up bigger, like it got hollow, you know.
Oh, yeah.
And then I lost all strength, and I fell down to the ground. And I remember as I was falling to the ground, how everything was blue. And I mean, I'm looking at my skin, and I look like Papa Smurf. I mean, everything's blue. The trees, the ground, everything was fluorescent blue. And I was scared to death because I couldn't move. And I'm like, oh no, this thing's got me. I can still think. My mind is still working good.
Yeah, yeah.
I barely lift my eyes up, but my body's not working. I don't know if you ever seen anybody when they get the Holy Spirit and they're slain in the Spirit and they can't move, or maybe they start laughing or crying or whatever. But it's like I was slain in the Spirit and I could not move, and I just lost all strength. And then the Lord asked me, he asked me again, do you still want to go? And I'm like, oh my God, this thing's about to truck to beam me up or something. I don't know where we're going. Then I got to think about Mom. I'm like, man, if I just go now, they're not going to know where I'm going, what happened to, if I got murdered or what. And I'm
right.
Like, I can't leave them behind thinking like that about me.
Sure.
And then I'm scared for myself. I'm like, is this God, or are these aliens? You
well,
know, like, who was I talking to?
Well, that's just it. I mean, because there's evidence that people have been spoken to by these ETs that they don't use words like we do. That's kind of primitive. They use what they call consciousness.
Yes.
They speak through the mind, and it sounds kind of out there, but it's really not. It's just an advanced communication level. So
Yes.
that's it. That's what I was going to say just a moment ago.
So I'm on the ground, and all of a sudden, being that I can't really move, it's like I'm trying to like talk back to God now. Where usually when He would talk to me on the inside, I'd talk audibly back to Him, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like I can't find a way to communicate. I can hear it in my head, but I can't make my body do this, and I'm scared to death now. And I mean, I can breathe okay and everything, and my eyes can blink, and my mind's still working 100%, but I cannot physically move. And I'm trying. I am. I'm really trying because I'm scared to death. I'm trying to get out from under this thing and get back in the house. You know, I am scared to death, and I'm pleading with God, and I'm crying and everything, and I'm just best I can trying to plead with Him. You know, God, please, no, I changed my mind. No, I don't want to go. And then little by little, I heard this toosh again, and then that light thing closed up. It didn't completely go away because I could still see the blue, but it wasn't near as intense, and all the blue on the pine trees and all my skin went away, but I could still see the blue up there, but it was not near as intense after I heard that giant gear shifting mechanism, whatever that was that controlled that beam. And so I was able to stand back up, and then I just started moving my hand away, like, no, move away from me, no. And I was shaking my head exaggeratingly as best I can, thinking I know they can see me, so I'm going to make sure there's no mistake in what my intentions are, and that is no, I do not want to go. So I'm shaking as big as I can, no, and then I'm using both hands, please move away from me. And when I did, that humming sound got a little bit louder, and then it slowly began to move forward, going due south. And then, like I said, to describe this thing, I'm going to say it had to been at least something like no kidding, probably about 3 miles or so. And it was no particular shape. Like, I can't say it was round or rectangle or what, because this thing, I don't know how else to explain it. It looked like a dang floating city, but made out of this purplish blue metal, you know?
Hmm.
And the light that was on it was so intense, but so beautiful and mesmerizing, but at the same time just scary as you know what. But this thing began to slowly move away, and then as it was moving away, it began to slowly lift, and then I watched it as it went plumb out of sight, and it started off real slow and easy, and then soon as that end part went past me, like when I say past me, within just a foot or so past me, it went dead silent, and the ground beneath my feet quit vibrating with that thunder sound, It was just immediate silence. And I was just still fascinated, like, how come I don't still feel the ground shaking, even though it's still right there and just a foot past me, as best as I can estimate, because I'm on the ground and it's up there. But I'm like, how am I still not feeling and hearing that? That is weird. And then it slowly began to lift up, and then it went from due south to kind of going back west, like headed towards California. And then it slowly went up, and I don't know if you ever seen them, but they at night sometimes when you go outside and you see these little dots that look like stars, but they're moving. And it
Yes.
turned into one of those. It turned into that. It went straight up, and all these time I'm thinking I was looking at either a shooting star or a satellite. I'm thinking, how many times did I look at those? And it was one of these. And it
Oh.
went up there, and then hauled butt, like I said, due west going towards California. And I never saw that again, but I never forgot it. And I remember after that, I quit praying. I don't mean quit praying, but I mean praying like, God, come take me away from here. I never did that crap again. And that scared me.
So I've got a question for you, and
Sure.
it's kind of a philosophical, spiritual question here, and
Sure.
I'm just curious. I aside from the cryptid side, I do, a fascination of mine because I've heard so many links or associations sometimes to the UFOs. I've done
Yeah.
quite a few UFO stories that people have not heard yet.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
we never had any to go out there and test for radiation or nothing. And mom and dad still live in the same place.
yeah, and now this was in a remote countryside, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, they live off the highway, but it's in the country. It's where they're located. Like it's probably 3 miles. At like itself is just a little old country one horse town.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like Hayworth, Oklahoma is. It's
Yeah,
just a small
exactly.
little town.
So,
And so as you go out, but they do live out in the country, but they do live off the highway there. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
But it's in
Mm-hmm.
the country. You know, and Dad, they own 14, I think 14 acres, just like we own 14 here. But here we're surrounded by over 500 acres of, like tree farm, where we're at
Right.
now. Because we've always liked being in the country. I don't like being in the city because I like my privacy. And there's some things you can do in the country you just can't do in the city.
Mountain. I call it Peavy's Mountain.
But we've always been that way, and I like being out, like I said, the
Sure.
nature and stuff like that. But yeah, they're in the country, but they are off the highway where they're at too.
So with
800
what do you say?
Oh, he was just talking about where we're at. He really likes where we've moved to right here. He's always complimented and bragged on it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's nothing like it. So the question I have is this. I'm not. So I'm asking. I'm not questioning what you heard. When you said you heard the Lord or you heard this voice. Was it as clear as you and I talking?
Actually, it was, especially when he got real stern with me. I mean, it was clear as a bell because then I perked right up and immediately began to repent because, you know what I mean? And like I said, I was sleeping good. I mean, sleeping like a baby. I was sleeping so good. And it's like when he woke me up, like he said, get up. I sat up, and then immediately I'm groggy and still sleepy because I was like in REM sleep. When you dream, you're sleeping that kind of sleep.
Yeah.
And then somebody come wake you up out of that, it's kind of irritating.
Well, yeah, and because you were in a deep state, that deep, I believe it's the theta level of sleep.
Yeah,
So, what the
yes.
question that I have is, and
Yes, yeah. Oh, we've got so many more.
so
I mean, I don't want to keep sidetracking, but yeah, me and him, we both got so much more. We could probably fill a bucket with stuff that's
well,
happened.
let's do this. Let's why don't we kind of pause here, and then we'll do a part 2 or a part 3 or whatever we need to do because I really want to hear everything.
Okay,
Is that okay with you guys?
that's fine with me.
Fine, sir.
Yeah, that'd be fantastic. So my question is how do you know it was God or the Lord speaking to you versus these aliens?
Beings, yeah. I have asked myself ever since that day because I remember, in the Bible it says, "Be careful, because they can come, as angels of light or wolves in sheep's clothing, so to speak."
Mm-hmm.
And I got to thinking, I kept thinking about, well, how was I living? Is there any way I could have been fooled? Was I, did I open a door somewhere I shouldn't have? I kept just going through all these things in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
Well, the reason I say it was God, not to try to take you down another rabbit hole, but before this, like a year prior before, somewhere, I'm going to say right, yeah, it's got to be somewhere around the year, I'd had a dream where I saw myself in a bad car wreck and where I had died. And then that next morning I got up and I told my mom, I said, "Mom," I said, "I don't know if there's anything to it. I hope it ain't." I said, "But I just had a dream last night where I died in a bad car wreck. But, the Lord brought me back like that,
Mm-hmm.
And so she was cooking like eggs and toast and stuff, cooking breakfast. And she's kind of like, "Okay, hon, we'll just have to pray about that." And she didn't really think much about it either,
Mm-hmm.
Well, a month later, I had that bad doggone wreck. I was in a 76 Camaro, had a hot rod 350 in it, 4-bolt main in it. And the tires, because we'd always go up to Longview and go racing red light to red light, which, is illegal and we shouldn't have been doing it. But, we were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I had this car fixed up and I had actually swapped it because I had a turbo Trans Am and I blew the motor up in it. And I had a friend that had this. His dad was a mechanic and he built hot rods. And so he said, "Well, hey, I want that Trans Am with them T-tops and stuff. I'll trade you this running 76 Camaros and you ain't got to do nothing to it. But I want that Trans Am even though the engine's blown up." I said, "Hey, let's do it. We swap titles right there,
Mm-hmm.
And I'd take this thing and go run it." Well, I was working at a grocery store at the time. I had went and got my paycheck and it had just got done raining. I hit a slick spot. You ever been going down the highway and you got like, you see the rock, but then you got like that patch where it looks like like oil or tar, because the rocks wore down so much.
Mm-hmm.
And I hit one of them spots with that doggone slick water on it. And they say that when it first rains, that's the worst time because the oil doesn't have time to separate from the water yet.
Exactly.
And so I hit that spot. And when I did, that Camaro began to spin like a helicopter. And there was a 4-foot ditch or culvert, whatever you want to call that, off to my left. And I was spinning towards it. And I had 2 seconds, is about all I had because it was happening so fast. And I said, oh, God. And then it was lights out. Now, when I say lights out, I mean, I'm gone. I know I'm gone. And then all of a sudden, out of the blue, like I was telling you, when he told me to get up that night, well, that same voice told me to wake up at this time. Like, it told me wake up, not get up, but wake up. It told me 3 times. It said, wake up like that. Then it said, wake up again. And then that 3rd time, it was with authority. And he said, wake up like that. And then my body, it's like reacted before I consciously was even aware of what I was doing. And when I woke up, I had pressure on my left shoulder and pressure on my right shoulder. And what they were doing was they were holding me up, which I say were angels. And I was standing in the middle of the highway, and my car was still stuck in the trees. And the Texas Rangers said I was somewhere between 50 and 60 foot up. And my car was still, mangled up in that mess. And when they finally was able to get the car and stuff out there, they said they saw my body had come to rest inside that car, and the gear shift went through my right knee, and you could see where it shished bobbed through. I still got the scars there. And I bit my tongue off. They had to sew it back on. And then my whole nose, they had to sew it back on too. So I got plastic surgery there. And I broke my 2nd vertebrae in my neck.
But you can't tell it.
But the thing is they said,
you can't see that it ever happened.
They said, how did you get out of that car? They said, by theory, it was such an impact because I had to, I don't know if you know what SST Kragers are.
Yeah.
Real thick rim. But
Yeah.
it smacked them like a pancake. That's how violent the wreck was. I went through the top of 4 pine trees at between 50 and 60 foot up in there. And so they said, how did you get out of that car? Could we see where the gear shift was mangled and where you were probably shish kebabbed and pinned right there because there's a puddle of blood. They said, how did you get out of that car? Because all the windows were cracked, but still intact, and the doors were jammed shut. How did you get out of that car? And they said, better yet, because it had rained, how did you get through that muddy clay ditch that's between 4 and 6 foot wide and not leave any footprints? And all I could tell them was, well, God told me to wake up, and I didn't walk across that ditch or get out of that car. I was standing up in the middle of the highway, and the pressure was holding me. Well, while this pressure was holding me, a white truck pulled up, and then this gentleman got out, and he was wearing like a white tuxedo, like he was either come from a wedding or going to a wedding. It's like, to me, in my mind, that's how it was working.
Mm-hmm.
But I just remember he had a real bright white suit on, and he asked me, he said, do you want me to take you to the hospital? Well, I'm trying to talk, but I can't because you got to remember I bit my tongue off. And at the same time, as I'm trying to talk to him, the pressure on my left side and right side slowly lift off. When it does, I about fall down. And then the gentleman that's there, he grabs me now physically. And he helps me get in the truck. And as best I could, I was trying to tell him, no, just take me home because I got to let my mom know I'm okay.
Right.
But I don't really realize how bad it is and what I look like. I'm still in shock and stuff.
Sure.
Kind of like,
Right.
But the thing is how did he know where he took me straight to the house where I was living there at home with mom and dad, and I never gave him any directions or anything. I wasn't able to, and I couldn't talk anyway because my tongue bit off. But somehow he knew where I lived, and he took me home. I got out, and I heard glass break where mom was in the kitchen. She saw me and evidently dropped the bowl or whatever she had, and it shattered. She came running out there. Oh my God! Oh my God! And she took me straight to the hospital. We had an old Ford van, and she kept looking at me freaking out. And I was trying to tell her, don't look at me. I know I'm bad. Don't look at me. Just concentrate on driving. You'll kill us both, And so she took me up. And anyway, long story short, there was a nun that was running around there to go around praying for people. And the doctors began to throw me over here and put me on this roller bed, to get me in there. And she told him, ran up and said, hold up. She said, the Lord told me this gentleman has a broken neck. So, be gentle with him. So they slowed down and, was real extra careful with me. But before, they were hauling butt trying to get me in there because I'm just shooting blood everywhere.
Oh, yeah.
And so they get me in there, and sure enough, my second vertebrae was snapped and severed. And they even come in there, show me the x-rays, and they kept checking my toes, saying, do you feel this? Do you feel that? And saying, you shouldn't be able to feel nothing. They said, because there's nothing connecting here. It's like, you shouldn't be able to feel anything. You should at least be paralyzed. And all I could tell them was God.
Sure.
So they ended up putting where they drill them 4 screws in your skull.
Yes.
And put the halo on. And they had done sewed my tongue back on and everything. Matter of fact, that was another thing. They was going to do a tracheotomy, but I talked them out of it. I said I had enough scars. I didn't want nothing else. If I needed them and I couldn't breathe, I'd hit that button,
Sure.
And somehow I got through that by the grace of God. But while I was in there, though, I do remember before they were putting me under to put the halo on, I just remember seeing the outline of Jesus. And I remember his voice just speaking to me, and he just said, don't worry, son, I don't want you preaching from a wheelchair. I just remember I had total peace after that, and all the pain immediately went away as soon as I heard that voice. And I knew it was Jesus, then. And so when you're asking me, how do I know that was God? Well, it's because that same voice I heard then was what I heard at that time, too.
Okay. Incredible.
And so what my uncle was trying to tell you is that a while ago he was saying that, like, you can still see scars. You can see where everything was, but it healed up so well. I didn't have any physical therapy or nothing. I was scheduled to be in the halo for 6 months, and everything fused back together in 3. My doctor, and we was in there just for a regular checkup at 3 months in, and I remember he had me sitting on a bed, and there was another guy looking at me, sitting at me, and it was kind of weird and funny because with these halos on, you can't just turn your neck and look away. So we're sitting there looking at each other. He's on one bed, and I'm at the other one. And they set us down. We're just sitting there looking at each other. So we try to strike up conversation and make it where it's not so awkward. You know?
Right.
Finally, the doctor comes in there and he says, hey, Sean, I'm going to take another x-ray if you don't mind. And I said, yeah, sure, and then, like, he did it like 3 times, and the third time he asked again. I said, yeah, but is something wrong? He said, no, nothing's wrong. He said, really? He said, if this third one comes out where everything's good, he said, we're going to take this thing off today. And I said, are you serious? He said, yeah, man. And I said, really? He said, no, I'm not kidding. And sure enough, man, everything turned out good on the third x-ray. And he said, it had to have been some miracle. He said, you should have been in this thing for another 3 months. And especially, not having therapy and all. And so they took I remember it was a Black & Decker. Actually, that's something else. I remember they used a doggone regular tool and pulled them screws out of my head. I'm sure they probably had alcohol and everything, but I was kind of amazed by that, and pulled them out. And he told me, he said, now catch your head because your muscles aren't used to being worked. He said, your head's going to try to fall over. And I was like, really? So I was like, so I've just kind of lightly held my head because I'm kind of in disbelief that it's going to do that. And sure enough, when he pulled that last screw out, my head fell over and I had to catch it. And then they he tightened that, I don't know if you call them a rubber neck or what, but around my neck, and then it kind of helped supported it,
Oh, like a cervical collar?
Yes, exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of, they put me in a wheelchair and rolled me out because that was a protocol, even though I could walk.
Oh, sure.
The car, and then I'm on my own from there. But the long story short, though, it's like that started then the floating city or spaceship, whatever you want to call it, but it was massive. And then from there, it's like later on, then we got the either the Bigfoot or the Dogman from Oklahoma, and then for sure later on, I know that those are Dogman or werewolf. I'm trying to get it together. From my understanding, I'm told that the Dogmen are what they are, but a werewolf is what changes from man to beast. So it may be what I saw was Dogmen, because it seemed like what they were permanent, not something that would change back and forth. So, but I'm not, I can't be 100%.
Oh yeah, I mean, and who ultimately knows? So I think what we'll do, if you both don't mind, we'll just schedule a time maybe next week sometime, and we'll do a part 2
Sure.
and we'll talk about anything you want to talk about, some of the things that we hadn't talked about tonight.
That'd be awesome. I've got some things to tell too.
Okay,
Yeah.
perfect.
He
That
got a
sounds
lot.
great. That sounds great. I want to hear. So, I
I'm a miracle.
He is for sure.
what's that?
Hey, he said,
I'm a walking miracle.
Okay. Well, I want to hear that too.
Washed so bad, my brains was on both sides of the yellow line.
Oh, my
I got
word.
taken to the hospital and walked it. I had to learn to talk and walk again. The
Yeah.
lady, when I finally was able to get up and go to the hospital, to the post office with my mom, walking up the ramp to the post office, this lady stopped and said, "Excuse me, sir." I turned and she said, "You're..." I said, "Yes, ma'am, I am." She said, "Would you do me a big favor, sir?" And I said, "Yes, if in my capability, certainly." She said, "Please take your cap off, but don't show me the top of your head." And I did. And when I looked back up, she had big crocodile tears coming down both cheeks, running down both cheeks. And she said, "Sir, you're a walking miracle. The last time I seen you, you was laying in the center of the highway, and your brain, sir, was on both sides of the yellow line."
like a water.
And she could see I didn't quite understand. She said, "No, your brain, sir, was on both sides of the yellow line. It was like you took a metal on the side of your head and jumped on it with both feet. That was your head."
Yeah.
And to see here you talking, and I never had even a fracture, a hairline. I still don't have a hairline fracture of my skull.
Yeah, that's pretty wild what happened there. He
Wow.
was in a coma, and then when we got to the hospital, our prayer was that God would wake him up out of that coma. And when we got to the hospital and got on that elevator, about the time we got up to the room, he woke up out of that doggone coma.
I was in a coma for 30 days.
My word.
So God did a miracle there for sure.
Yeah. My word.
And not a hairline fracture do I have in my head.
There are miracles. Absolutely. There is astounding miracles. So, I'm glad you're with us. And
Yes, sir. We'll do a part 2.
yeah, let's do a part 2. And I want to thank you guys.
All night.
Yeah, I know. We could
got
go
so much
on.
stuff.
I want to hear some more. So what we'll do is we'll keep in contact. You've got my number. We'll text each other and we'll say, okay, this evening is a good time between us both, and we'll just hook back up.
Okay, that sounds good.
God bless you, sir.
God bless you guys too. And again, thank you for your service there, Uncle. And thank you so much. And we'll keep tabs with each other, and we'll hook up next week. And I want to thank you both for sharing this evening. Highly, highly fascinating. Amazing. So you guys have a wonderful evening, and we'll talk again next week.
All right, sounds good. Have a good one.
Okay, you too, Sean. Take care.
All righty. Bye-bye.
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 Don't even know where to start to kind of summarize, but I'll start with the Dogman creatures here just briefly. I won't talk about every encounter that I heard, but I'll just say this. The one that was in front of the uncle, how this Dogman creature moved over the fence and then intentionally slowed down in front, just feet from the front of his truck, and how big it was compared to the truck. He was talking about he's got like 44-inch swampers, and that's basically a type of tire that's got big lugs on it. I've got 35 inches on my Power Wagon, and 44 inches would make those look small. My tires are just massive. So 44s are really massive. And for this creature to be 5 foot above his hood, that's big. That is extremely big. Which coincides with many of the encounters we've talked about, how big these creatures can be and how big they can get and roughly how much they can weigh. And so that just really kind of falls in line with many of the encounters of people that I've interviewed over the last few years. And just the intent of this creature, there's aspects of it that it's intentful. There's aspects of it that is canine in nature. It can't control the way it behaves. In other words, is what I would say. It behaves like a canine, would, tongue hanging out, saliva. But there's a part to it that's just it's of another realm of intellect. It's almost like it is and a part human, how it behaves, how it thinks. And that's the mystery. That's the scary part. That's the part that we're all kind of scratching our head. Like, and I brought up the gentleman of the first-hand account that passed it to another gentleman that I know, that the second-hand relay of information of how he said that this guest was told by one of these government people that he destroyed an asset. I've never heard it said that way, but that has a connotation with it that they know about these creatures. Of course, we know that, but that they intentionally let them go, or they're aware of them and just kind of follow them, which I just can't even rectify that in my head that that's even so. So again, still more questions regarding that particular event that was relayed to me this weekend, or last week, yeah, this past week. But just the encounter that the uncle had, and this gentleman, not only in Oklahoma but Texas. So really, they're all over. I was highly fascinated that he had some occur in Oklahoma, kind of of course, where I live, but they're all over, folks. They're about in every state that I've heard of at this point in time, but especially out in the Carolinas, Virginia, and Tennessee, Kentucky area, but Texas, Oklahoma, other Kansas, they're everywhere. But I do believe they're in higher concentrations across the country. For maybe the topography is a little bit, they can hide a little bit better. Food sources, all those things, water sources. Don't know there, but we're all still learning. We're all still students, and but I know a little bit more than the average person. I'll put it that way, because this is what we pursue. We look at this, and we've seen them at a distance. Wiley Dave, my brothers and I, and they're massive. They're very, very big. And so I can't even imagine one being just feet away from the truck, walking in front of you, slowing down intentionally, looking at you. And it sees you, you see it, and it's not really afraid. Then it bounds and just, it's running so fast it just splits the grass. That's incredible. So anyway, I that one just kind of stuck out to me. And then, of course, the UFO sighting that the gentleman had, that's also incredible, which we're going to get into some more of that on the next show, and I'll kind of do an intro to talk about that. So, guys, I appreciate your patience. It's been kind of a long interview here, but it's always highly fascinating. We learn all we can from each interview, and that's what we can do. So be careful what you wish for. Be careful going out investigating. Use good common sense. Always bring some means to protect yourself. Always tell people where you're going, and plan for the unexpected. Plan for contingencies, and yeah, be safe. And until next time, guys, I want you all to be safe out there. And when you can, visit our website, monster911.com, and you can go to Instagram at monster911, and we have the Twitter account monster_911, and we also have the Facebook account here at monster911. Visit the website, grab some shirts. In the meantime, guys, be safe. I care about you guys. Until next time, this is Lance with Monster 911. Take care.